We would like to acknowledge and give thanks to the traditional owners of the land we record this podcast on, the Yagara and Turrbal people,
and their continued connection to the land and waterways on which we meet.
Hello and welcome to Sporties, where we look at life through the lens of sport. My name is Georgie Trickett.
And I am Libby Trickett.
And Lib, I am so excited that we have a guest in the studio with us today.
I know, it's so exciting.
She has played for the Australian Diamonds 104 times. That's 104 caps. She played for 15 years at that elite Australian level.
She's an iconic Australian.
She is. And she's also a director for the Brisbane Broncos, coach's coach. So I've actually attended a couple of her amazing coaches clinics and a kids coach. Welcome to the pod, Vicki Wilson.
Hi, Georgie. Hi, Libby. Thank you so much for the big wrap. It's wonderful to be here.
Oh, it's well deserved. Vicki, I think we couldn't go anywhere in this conversation without first talking to you about the incredible match on the weekend between the Melbourne Vixens and the West Coast Fever. That was some of the most exciting netball I have certainly watched in a very long time. Can you tell us what your thoughts were?
Oh, it really was an iconic game because it was played at the Rod Laver Arena, had over 15,000 people in the house. The Vixens, just a fairy tale finish. They came from fourth position. Well, actually, they had a dud start to the year. I think they lost 4 consecutive games. And when the coach, Simone McInnes, an old teammate of mine, was interviewed, they said, well, what's happening? She goes, oh, I don't know. It feels as though we lack the energy, a bit lifeless. And they go, well, what's the answer? She goes, you know what? I think we should just go to the pub. And then that became the catchphrase for the Vixens. But they certainly turned it on. And there's no doubt the Melbourne crowd, that they just love the Vixens, but they love netball and they're great students of the game. So the roof was being taken off, absolutely. But superb netball all round. And I don't think that margin ever got out to more than 4 goals at any time. So, Fever were the red hot favourites. They hadn't dropped, I think, 11 games. They were on the consecutive run. So Vixens bounced back from a couple of weeks ago in the major semi where they lost by 20 goals. And to be able to turn that around in a fortnight is pretty amazing, and it's an incredible feat.
So for you, you've obviously been in and around netball for so many years. To see something like, obviously netball has been a hugely popular sport in Australia for many decades, but it really seems to have gone from strength to strength, getting on television, and the popularity just continues to soar. How does it feel for you to see a 15,000 strong crowd watching the grand final of the Netball Championships?
Well, I just think build us more stadiums because, the game it's so wonderful and it deserves to be played indoors by, 8-year-olds and, 10-year-olds. But I certainly am so proud, Libby, because there were many, many years where, so many women and, there were trailblazers in the game when it comes to coaches who pounded the pavement and, really knocked on the doors of government officials and sponsors, commercial partners to try and, build the platform really that we have today. And we're so fortunate. It's a terrific spectacle, and the growth of the game is going, through the roof, particularly it's still at grassroots, and our product at the end is just amazing. And now we have a real focus on inclusion of males in the game. They have been playing for a number of years. I remember probably my last couple of years playing for Queensland and Australia, we started to have practice games against the men, and they were fantastic. It was really tough. They're so much, I suppose, stronger onto the ball, that little bit faster due to that, that special little chromosome they have. So it was a great challenge, but to see the men play the game in their own right and compete against other men is absolutely fabulous. And it's what the sport needs, so we can be taken, I suppose, seriously at that international level when we start looking at the Olympics.
Well, yeah. That's the next question we had to ask, is that off the back of such a successful 2025 Super Netball season, there's now this incredible push that has come out from Netball Australia to get the netball included in Brisbane 2032. What's the stumbling block? Is it the male participation angle, or is it that we need more stadiums and we need more, feet on the ground to get it to happen?
Well, I think it really comes down to the inclusion of the men and making sure the men have a really healthy, strong international competition.
Ironically.
the pathways are getting better and better. But I think when it comes to facilities, we actually just don't have enough facilities to accommodate, the men playing. As it stands, our younger girls don't get the opportunity to play indoors. So it is a matter of more stadiums. At the club level, I know court space is at a premium. And, that's the same with change rooms and, toilet facilities. So all the infrastructure certainly needs to be looked at. And it isn't even ideal for females only. In fact, I go to one association and I keep having a giggle because it was the same bathroom I used, over 30 years ago. So it'd be wonderful to see that money invested.
When you go to those bathrooms on a carnival day where you've got a huge number of players there, they absolutely flood every time. And to think like you're actually having to petition off a court so that it doesn't get flooded from what's coming out of the toilet block. And that's so normalised now for that association that they know exactly what to do when it happens and what to cordon off. And I watched it happen the other day and thought, this is not good enough. Like, these were the toilet blocks you used, and now as associations, you know exactly what to do when they flood, and that nobody's invested in the sport for such a long time.
Well, I think, many, many years ago when associations were being carved out and council was divvying up land, sporting facilities were always built on floodplains, and it was an odd parcel of land. And, everyone was just so grateful to be able to get this parcel of land in inner city Brisbane. But whereas now when you go to, like, one of the best facilities around is the master plan facility on Fisherman's Road at Maroochydore. Soccer fields, Aussie Rules fields, netball courts. Amazing facility, clubhouse built up high. It can hold... Well, it did hold the junior state championships. There are 3,000 competitors, 3,000 spectators, 6,000 people just walking through that facility every day, and the facility could cope. And ideally, that's what you'd love, but everyone is landlocked. So there's a land shortage here in the inner suburbs of Brisbane. But it's something that we strive for. But as far as the international game, we certainly want the men to be playing and the men to be competitive, and to have some really challenging games, at least in the top 8 countries in the world. But at the moment, Australia and New Zealand still really dominate.
Yeah, that's what I think people may not realise about getting a sport included into the Olympics and potentially the Paralympics as well, is that they need to be competitive around the world and have both men and women playing the sport. And it creates, not just one challenge, but multiple challenges for a sport to get included.
Yeah, you certainly can't have disparity between the genders. And I know that's something that they're internationally working hard on, and each state and territory are working really hard here in Australia as well.
Vicki, we at Sporties love to talk about kids' sport as much as we love to talk about the grown-ups and all their amazing achievements. And something that has been really on my mind has been the issue of rolling subs in junior levels of sport. So for those who don't necessarily know, a rolling sub situation means that you don't have to wait till the end of a quarter to take a player off. You can move them in and off the court throughout a game. And I'd love to get your perspective on this, because I recently spoke to a friend who observed you during junior state age out on the court with your team, and not once did you use the rolling sub opportunity with your team. And it occurred to me that if Vicki Wilson can coach without using rolling subs, surely the rest of us can, and there's a good reason for doing it.
I'm not a supporter of the rolling sub one little bit. I think it takes a while for a child to be able to settle into a pattern of play and to be able to read it. And you want them to be instinctive. And cognitively, it takes them a while to process it. And if you keep on chopping and changing them, you never give them the opportunity to learn on the run. So didn't use it at all, managed to get third in the state. And the other thing was, Georgie, every child played every game, because you need to keep them engaged. And that was really important. But when you take them off, all you're doing is just creating these youngsters who are just scared to make a mistake, because quite often coaches make the change after they've made a mistake. They become risk adverse. They just don't want to have a go at it. Or if they miss a shot, they turn and look to the sideline. I keep saying to any of the kids I coach, sport is unpredictable. That's why we play it. And, things are going to happen, and you might win it, you might lose it. but, you keep on going. So as a coach, I believe at a coaching session, our job is to, we teach them skills and we put the parameters around certain drills, but I'm not a believer in structure, having set plays, because, even when I coach and I present something to a youngster and, I'll want them to do it one way and they'll interpret it another way. And I'll go, geez, I never thought of that. I don't stop them, because I think, oh my goodness, they've flipped it around. And that's a really good way to do it. I like it. So it allows them to be thinking players. And that's where that instinctive players, comes into it. But certainly chopping and changing, I don't see where they learn. They just become worried about making errors. And really 8 minutes or even 15 minutes, that's not long enough for them to, to really learn what's going on. So I believe we should just cut it out of junior sport completely and just let them have a go. And when they come off at half time, I ask them the questions, or in the break, So, if your pass is intercepted, what other type of pass could you do? So you question them. So make them problem solve it.
I just think every parent and every coach needs to hear that and take that on board. And if it's good enough for Vicki bloody Wilson, it's good enough for them.
Thanks, Libby. I'm going to get out my platform and beat my drum.
Yes.
Beat it louder, Vicki. We'll help you.
Absolutely.
It's so important, because we do, as I'm sure you know, Vicki, we know that kids are dropping out of sport around that 13, 14 age group, where things get really competitive and where coaches start to specialise kids into specific positions, and also start to go, well, you're my weakest player, so I'm only going to play you half a game every weekend. And I just hear stories, and Libby, I know you do as well, of kids who are totally demoralised by their experience of sport.
Well, I'm really proud to say that over that state age championships, I did not have one tear from all 10 kids. And someone said, how'd you do it? And I said, because they played every game. They all knew they were going on. I told them that they were going to go on. And I, changed who started and who finished. Goodness sake, they're 11 years of age. You never know what you're going to get. One day, one game they could be a star, another game that you might be able to catch a ball, but they were engaged and they tried their hardest. And I think that's the most important thing. They tried their hardest, but the build-up, your practice sessions are about teaching the skills to enable them to cope. And I don't think any of the kids really knew what pressure was. I just think they went out there and they threw the ball away. Not one kid turned and looked at the sideline. No one worried if they missed a goal. They just got it back. I always say to them, is there a rule of if you miss a goal? And they're like, is there? Well, I don't know. Is there? And they went, no. And I went, oh, there you go. No rule if you miss a goal. If you miss a goal, just play on. And so it was really a sense of calmness around it. But I think that's something coaches make the changes to often make themselves look smart, when it's just all it does is confuse the kid even more.
Yeah. And I think what I love the most about what you're creating with your team is that sense of safety. Like, it's okay to make a mistake. You're going to get a go. Everyone's getting a go.
Even Archie's getting a go.
Archie's into it. He agrees with me. Good on you, Archie.
Yeah. But I love that idea, because I think, as you said at the beginning, it creates thinking players and not reactive players, people who are, willing to have a crack and see what their body's capable of, what their teammates are capable of. And that creates just the strongest team and also the funnest way to play.
Oh, absolutely. And they're embedded in the victory, embedded in the loss, but they really just shrugged off the loss. And when you ask them what was the highlight of the game, one player responded, oh, it was when you were laughing because someone fell over. And God, that was probably a bad coaching moment.
That would have been me. I would have laughed.
But it was actually the young kid who fell over. She goes, she started laughing before I even hit the ground. And I went, well, it was kind of funny. So it was certainly enjoyable, and something I love doing is coaching the youngsters as well as the elite.
Oh, Vicki, I think it's wonderful that we get to hear from you. And I know that I have learned so much through your coaching sessions, the ability you have to connect with adults and to also share with adults how to best connect with kids. It's absolutely priceless. And I only wish more grown-ups could hear what you're saying about the importance of keeping kids on the court and keeping them playing and making sure, most importantly, that it's still fun. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolute pleasure. See you later.
How awesome.
I love Vicki.
Isn't
She's just the best.
so? It's like this voice of reason.
Everybody needs to be taught by her just how to live life.
There's no need to do this rolling subs business, carry on. And I think if you go back and watch those Super Netball Grand Final from the weekend,
Do they do rolling
I mean, sometimes, but very rarely. And also,
But like, who decided rolling subs were the thing?
I don't know, but I just think it's so unnecessary. And it's just creating so much anxiety
Yes.
at the kid level and also the parent level. Like I've heard stories of parents standing on the sideline with their phones out, timing the amount of court time their kids get.
Well, that's too much.
Well, but it becomes really difficult to track how much kids are playing, right? Because if you're constantly on and off, like, well, no, she played a lot today. Well, did she?
Yeah.
Or did she get subbed off every time she made a mistake? Yeah. And that's the part that kills me, that we're not creating a safe space for kids to make mistakes.
But that's also not creating great athletes.
Oh, no, not at
This is the
all.
thing. Like, this is what's so ridiculous about this whole concept, especially, I mean, even about just going all the way to the top, like elite sports. Like, if you want to make an elite athlete, get them in as many sports as possible, allow them to make mistakes, give them the space to know that that's okay, and then see what they're capable
And
of.
who knows what comes out of the other end?
Correct. Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Nobody cares. Really have my positive pants on today.
Come on, Libby. You wanted to talk about this next segment, and I think it's a really important subject to cover.
Yes, I agree.
You agree.
I agree.
With yourself.
I agree with myself. I agree with your
Summation.
of it all.
You're welcome.
So I saw, as I was doing the scrolling on the interwebs,
There's been quite a bit of scrolling last week.
on the Instagrams, and I was looking at the Female Athlete Project, who obviously we all know, we all love Chloe Dalton and Bez.
If you don't know, go and follow them at the Female Athlete Project on Instagram. It is the greatest.
I don't know Bez's last name. What's Bez's last name?
Oh, I don't actually know.
Chloe Dalton and Bez.
And we feel badly that we actually need to get Bez on the podcast. We best say sometime we need to interview her, and that's not, but like we just need to make that.
She shall only be Bez. She is like Madonna or Cher, just Bez. I saw that they made a post talking about how female athletes are to undergo mandatory gene testing for the 2025 World Championships in athletics.
So World Athletics has come out with this statement.
Correct. So World Athletics has introduced new regulations for eligibility in the female category at world ranking competitions. From 1st of September 2025, all athletes wishing to compete in the female category will be required to undergo a once-in-a-lifetime gene test to determine their biological sex. The test checks for the presence of the SRY gene and will be conducted via cheek swab or blood test.
How would you have felt about that if you're an athlete?
There's so much conversation now about trans athletes, about athletes with a sexual difference.
Arguably disproportionately to the number of athletes that we're talking about in this category.
Yes, I think what I get most over, for one thing, I do think it's invasive. I think,
Well, yes. I mean,
and who knows what that might uncover for people, because perhaps there are female athletes who have a sexual difference and maybe they don't know that. Maybe that's not something that they're aware of because they haven't been told or they just didn't know.
so, and that's
Particularly in third world countries where the medical system isn't set up for things like this.
yes. So there's a whole ethical dilemma that comes from that. Like once you identify that someone does contain the SRY gene is to do with Y chromosome. So it's a crucial aspect of male sex determination.
Yeah, the presence of it typically leads to male development.
I can't imagine how confronting it might be to participate in this gene test and then receive a result that actually can potentially tip your whole world on its head because it's not something you've ever had any awareness of. And had you not played this sport or run this in this competition, you wouldn't have otherwise known.
Yeah. And, there's arguments to say that, if you are someone with a sexual difference, you probably know about it by the stage that you are undergoing gene testing. But for sure, there are going to be athletes who don't and who are made aware of it through this process. And, again, people might argue then that's a good thing because then they potentially shouldn't be competing in the female category at, that elite level of sport. But again, I just feel like men aren't going to be undergoing any sort of gene testing. Like, again, I know in a lot of people's minds, and, I grant this, it's around women's safety and protection of fairness and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And what is fair, though?
But fairness is subjective, I believe. What we always aim for is inclusion, making sure people feel safe and welcomed and included in whatever sport at whatever level, right? It always comes back to women. So women are the ones who have to go and undergo this arguably invasive testing. And, then people are like, well, you have to go and undergo drug testing. So you have to provide urine samples and blood samples to ensure that we are a clean sport, for example. And for me, the mindset that I had with that is that's for the greater good. I don't want to be competing against people who are taking drugs. And for some people, undertaking this gene testing will be for quote unquote the greater good. I would look at it as an unnecessary thing to put all women participating in sport through for the absolute minuscule amount of athletes who are competing either with a sexual difference or who are trans athletes. So for me, the payoff isn't great enough to warrant every single woman wanting to compete at the highest level.
Yes. And then where does that information go and who has access
to it? And then where do we stop? Are we then going to start testing testosterone and how much testosterone women have and putting very specific, because we don't test men's testosterone.
No.
Should there be a mark?
That would be amazing.
Should that be a mark? Should there be a limit to how much testosterone?
That's a really good point.
Do you know what I mean? Because there are going to be men who have greater testosterone than other men. Yeah. And that potentially is an advantage. Where does it stop?
Arguably that is what gives them the advantage. Correct. But it might be naturally occurring and that's part of the reason why you...
for me. So,
exactly.
This is the thing. Where does it stop? Why is it always women who have to kind of be at the brunt of this? Does the end justify the means?
No, I think it's a really good point. I also sit there and think if we know that when World Athletics has made these big calls, or one of the world governing bodies has made these big calls, the others will now fall into line. And I think what's always really interesting to point out is that this is not necessarily the approach of the International Olympic Committee.
Yes.
So these governing bodies are doing this independent of International Olympic Committee. And are they doing it with the same ethos that an International Olympic Committee would look at these issues? I'm not sure.
All unclear, but I just feel like it's invasive and I'm not sure it's for the greatest purpose.
Lib, I think we need to round out with the Femmes.
Please.
The Tour de France Femmes avec Swift has just completed its incredible 8 or 9 stages, maybe 8 stages.
I think it was 8.
Of their version of the Tour de France, which was utterly incredible to watch. I watched a couple of stages and I was really captivated by the level of sportsmanship I saw displayed by these women. You can really tell, and I think it's actually a really interesting conversation to have when you get to watch a sport, a female sport coming up and getting itself acquainted with this elite level.
Yeah.
And so we are watching these women come up the curve and understand what these enormous climbs are like. And some of them are doing them for the first time and they've never competed in this type of event. And so it's so raw. It's so captivating.
It's what sport should be.
Well, and it's so not practiced or manufactured. Not that the Tour de France men's version is at all, but they're clearly more experienced in that format and they're experienced with the media that comes with that format. Whereas when you look at the Femmes, some of them didn't know they were racing in the Tour de France Femmes until
like a month before. They weren't on a team, and then they're on the team, and now they're doing the Tour de France, and they're like, what?
Yeah.
And they're processing everything in real time, and we as the viewer have the opportunity to watch that. And it's like sport of old, before athletes became media trained and had PR managers and people watching them. These are the rawest, most purest interviews you will see. You get the real feelings of what it's like to have the yellow jersey sacrifice herself so that someone like Sarah Gigante could make an attempt to win a stage, and she fell agonizingly short. And the crushing realization for her that that her team's yellow jersey had made a sacrifice for her, and she hadn't been able to convert it in the way she wanted to. And it all just plays out in front of you.
Yeah, it's such a joy to watch. It's like, as you said, it's, I don't know, there's a point that we've reached, I think, with a lot of elite sport now where it does feel very media trained. It just feels closed off.
And that's not a criticism. That's not their fault. That's part of how the sports have evolved, right?
Yeah, it is. And, unless you are comfortable, really comfortable in who you are and like what you're about, it can be really difficult to kind of put yourself out there in that respect. But it is so beautiful to see these elated women who are achieving just mammoth accomplishment.
Elated and heartbroken.
No, but that's the beauty of sport. Like the tagline used to be the joy and the heartbreak of sport, right? Yeah. Because that's what it's about. That's what we love to see. And, it doesn't always pan out perfectly. It often doesn't pan out the way that you want to,
most
the
of
way that you expect.
There is only one winner, right?
But this is exactly right. And that's what has been so lovely to watch about all of their reactions, not just on the race and watching it on SBS, but on social media and seeing all the different layers to each of the teams, as well as just, chef's kiss.
Big shout out to all the Australians that raced, and particularly to Sarah Gigante, who just should be so incredibly proud of what she achieved on the world's greatest cycling stage. We have loved watching you. We've loved the commentary that SBS have brought, and we're excited to see what next year brings.
I don't know what we're going to do for the next few weeks.
We're going to sleep. You are so tired.
I'm so tired.
You've watched way too much sport.
That's true.
With 5 children.
That's too much.
Big shout out to listener Lynn, who went and watched the Femmes Breakaway on SBS and loved it. Yes, Lynn.
Yes,
and
Lynn.
A big thank you to Sporty Geraldine, who messaged us and said, hey, you guys haven't been talking about netball enough. And she was right.
Good call, Geraldine.
Spot on, Geraldine.
And then we got Vicki on.
And then we were like, hey, let's phone a friend. Let's get Vicki on the pod.
Yeah.
And she was only too pleased to help out. So
please give us thoughts, feedback, things that you're interested in.
We love
things
it.
That we may have missed.
We're very responsive, as you can tell.
Archie is also very responsive.
And Archie is very much in our lives. So
he's really woken up this last week.
Yeah. We have to change how things work.
He may not be able to be in anymore.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Sportish. We will be back in your ears next week, possibly with Archie.
Yeah, maybe not.
But maybe not. I think we might vote him out. It is time.
You are the weakest link.
It is time to leave the island, Archie.
Goodbye.
Goodbye now.